Good.
Well, I'll tell you that you'll find me much more interesting as I paint.
No, you're great. You know, I mean, my mind is always in hyperdrive. I love people that are. I appreciate even just responsiveness. I already get a sense of. I already have a great respect for you, and I appreciate already your responsiveness. And I've pretty much been blabbling for the past hour, however long. But you need not make any excuses for yourself, because I've just been, gabbing. But I appreciate your responsiveness. I think responsiveness is a gift for a lot of people, because so many people just don't, and they don't have the sensibilities to. Responsiveness is important in art. Let's think about like your this painting. How because responsiveness is part of my philosophy to criticism. Responsiveness is an essential. I know how it fits in the paradigm of my philosophy. How would you say responsiveness is a factor in this? What would you say?
Well, I would say that if you're interested in looking at, say, this photo that I'm doing, you might as well just look at the photo. But if you want to see how I feel about the subject in the photo, then you're actually going to look at what I'm painting.
Right.
And it's the same with my landscapes as well. Like, if you're so interested in seeing what a landscape looks like, go see the landscape. If you're interested in seeing how I feel about the landscape, then look at my paintings.
Excellent. And how is that done? How is that? What are some methodologies that allow you to accomplish that?
Well, I love the idea that there's, even in what may seem as the chaos of nature, that there's great order.
Okay.
And so, for me, it's a matter of picking out that order and emphasizing it, whether it's in the design of breaking into the golden ratio, or if it's a matter of picking out just a specific part of what I see in the landscape or in subject matter, and emphasizing what draws me to that source.
Do you think the human mind creates order, or do you think it exists naturally?
I think it exists naturally.
You think it exists naturally?
Yeah.
You think it's a kind of an empirical thing?
Yeah. And
the mind responds to it?
Absolutely.
I agree. That's what Kant would say, and Kant's the best philosopher that ever lived, I would say. But I agree. I think it's a synthesis of two. I think the mind responds to order, and you have to have a mind to respond to order, to be able to see in your work those elements that are your expressiveness, that show. I mean, what's humorous about this painting? I mean, these sunglasses and that beaky or whatever.
Yeah.
What do you call that?
Pacifier binky. We always grew up calling them binkies.
I mean, it's hilarious. And so you have the responsiveness in this is an amazing humor. It's just but it's so frank, It's very you.
Yeah. Well,
it's nothing gaudy or overdone. It's very frank. It's very dry, but so direct.
Yeah. It's
in your face, and it's hilarious. It's like really dry wit.
Well, and see, to me, I'm trying to really embody everything that is my little girl. And at this stage of life, she was so quirky, and she still is, and so funny, that she was turning around and saying, I'm having a sleepover at my grandma's house, Grandma's house. Let's get moving. Come on, snapping her fingers. Like, what's the holdup?
How funny.
And this is literally just that moment of like, what's that moment? Come on, let's get moving.
Right.
I'm holding my hand out as if trying to figure out what's the delay.
Right.
I don't get what the problem is.
Right.
And
so in that, do you consider yourself a realist in your work?
Oh man,
because that's a question I've been wondering for myself, because your work is abstract and structural, but I'm wondering. I've been asking myself for a long time. I've been questioning that for myself. What do you think? I don't know.
I don't think so. I mean, I want.
You don't think so?
Well, I want to portray.
I'm tempted to think you are.
I want to portray realism in a sense, but I also. It's the abstraction within it.
But in the realist and modernist realist sense, not in a visual look like something sense, but in the real modernist sense, like in a proto modernist sense. Don't you think you're a realist? I mean, this painting is a realist painting.
Yeah.
Here you've caught a moment in time. This is a moment in time that will never happen again, and you're painting essential elements, no matter how structural the form may be, that's creating a really distinctive statement that. I mean, art for art's sake aside, that's 20th century realism.
Yeah.
20th century modernism. Today proto-modernism is a different entity. You know, proto-modernism uses subjectivity. So it's not just art for art's sake, it's Jeff for art's sake. You know what I'm saying? So your subjectivity is very important in the subject. So in that you have the formalism, and you have I think it's that moment in time that you're able to capture.
Well,
I think you're right. The symbols, the expressive symbols that you use. I think there's an intense realism in this.
Well, to that end, then, yeah. I mean, what I'm painting is, in essence, is I'm portraying a relationship that I have with my daughter.
Uh-huh.
And if that works, because, you know, you could express it in any number of different ways, but for me, you're right. There's a certain, as you say, realism into the approach that I'm taking to do it.
Uh-huh. I have a question for you. How do you want this? Do you want this to be an interview format where I'll ask you questions and we'll just we'll have a conversation, but it will be loaded with comments, which will become the structure of the article? Or would you prefer an article that is more just an analytical review? I like the former. I prefer the former, but which would you prefer?
I'll just say that you're the writer.
Maybe I'll do a combination of both. Okay, so I'll ask you.
Ask away.
I'll ask you. How does this painting convey realism to you? How is this painting a realist painting to you? And think of the idea of responsiveness.
Well, beyond the obvious that it's like you said, it's revealing the structure, the relatively accurate likeness of the figure and all of that.
Mm-hmm. But in the accurate likeness of the figure, it's still abstracted.
Right.
Go with the abstract. Like, how does the abstract? Well, keep going, please. Sorry.
Well, no, I think there's a certain what I love is that there's a certain imperfection that occurs that your brain, the viewer, is able to put back together.
Okay.
So there's fragments of paint that are nothing more than a square of a particular flesh tone.
Right.
That is, as we're looking at, say the middle of the arm. There's nothing but a value there that is nothing more than a smudge of paint.
Right.
That for the person who ends up seeing this as a finished product or finished piece will end up saying that that's an arm. And somehow their brain figures out what a glob of paint means to them. Right? And when somebody sees this, they're not going to have the same relationship that I have with my daughter in the actual moment that I'm portraying, but they'll get it, and it will mean that to them. They will have, whether it doesn't, regardless of who it is, either they've had this experience, this moment in their life as a child, or they're reliving it again with a child, or as a grandparent, or everybody has had this moment in their life.
You are such a realist. And you know what? Do you know how brilliant I am? I just got it. I just got the whole thing. It's the idea of gestalt.
Yeah.
It's the idea of gestalt.
Yeah.
That is what your painting is about. Your painting is, you have composite parts, but it's so much more of the composite, more than the composite. I mean, you're painting dabs, but you're painting reality.
Yeah.
You're going, your paintings can be described as minimal, reductive, structural, etc., but in essence, go so far beyond that. That's what this is all about.
And in learning how to paint, one of my, I had John Ericson.
Oh, that's so exciting! I'm so brilliant. I thought of that when you were talking, and I was like, yes.
Well, I love the idea of abstraction. And,
me too.
And filters.
Yeah.
And
what do you mean by filters?
Well, so here's the thing. On one level, me actually living the experience of this moment is that first layer.
Okay.
The second layer is that if I had been standing there painting and depicting it as it happened, I'm still one step away.
Sure.
The fact that I photographed it is a third filter. The fact that I printed it, or I manipulated it on a computer before I printed it is a fourth and a fifth layer.
Okay.
Say I took it a step further and I photocopied this a dozen times.
Right.
And it broke it down to nothing more than a value scale of the blacks of the sunlight, of the sunglasses, and the highlights of her hand.
Sure.
I took it like 8 filters later.
Sure.
And then I paint that. No longer am I physically attached to that moment that I experienced.
Completely detached.
I am only painting abstract representations of something that minimally, at best,
such a distance.
There's a distance between it of what actually happened, but I'm painting those moments that remain.
Right.
So I love the idea of like...
Is there still a realism in that? There is.
Yeah,
There is, yeah.
But I love the idea of like pushing yourself and finding where on that level of number of filters can I push like that comfort.
I like that.
And still have it be recognizable and maybe push it a little bit further, and so something like my cows may become nothing more than a black square on a canvas.
That cow.
And yet,
I love those
you
cows.
know that they're a cow.
Yeah.
And
that's why it's gestalt.
Yeah.
Is because you push it to a certain degree, and I think what makes it gestalt is because there is that order. You do recognize a very orderly system. If you had a different way of abstracting, it wouldn't be so. If it was more of a plein air or more of a liberal application or more of a impression plein air, it wouldn't be so. But you're so precise and you're so structural that there are composite parts, because gestalt is made up of composite parts being more than those. So